right, it's time for another After the Buzzer with Mitch. NFL Week 11 just wrapped up and a lot going on this week. We had a game in Spain. We had a lot of QBs delivering, a lot of QBs not. Some defenses playing great, some defenses not. So a lot going on, and we're going to get right into it. Make sure you like, share, comment, and subscribe for more. I love doing this. We'll get into the NBA throughout the NFL once that starts wrapping up as well. Now into the NFL. It's Carolina and Atlanta. I really thought this was a great game. Now Atlanta's obviously struggling this year. Carolina's kind of found a rhythm as of late, honestly. And Atlanta, I mean, in the beginning, Carolina scored 7-0. They led from a Tyrone McMillan touchdown, the rookie getting a multi-touchdown game today, or on Sunday. But nonetheless, they led 7-0, and then the Falcons, they ended the half really well. They scored 3 straight times to take a 21-7 lead with 25 seconds left, but Carolina scored a field goal to make it 21-10. But they had a 21-7 lead with just a minute 40 left in the half. So, I mean, they ultimately seemed like they closed out the first half really well. But then all of a sudden, in the second half, things changed. Bryce Young really took over. And I love seeing this because Bryce Young, I feel like he really needed that type of game, especially after the prior week where he only had 120 yards passing. He comes back and throws over 400. It was actually a franchise record of yards per game, yards in a game. He had 448 in that comeback win. But we'll get more into Bryce Young specifically later. But right now, you look at the second half stats. It was a touchdown, a field goal, and then they gave up 2 field goals, Carolina did. But the Panthers scoring 2 touchdowns and 2 field goals with the game-winning one in overtime, which was really, it was a 28-yard field goal by Ryan Fitzgerald after the Falcons sent it into OT. Now, this is pretty interesting because if you look at the playoff standings, Carolina is really right there. They're still in the hunt. I know Tampa Bay kind of owns that division right now, but Carolina's 9th. They're 6-5. They have a winning record, and after the beginning of this year, not many people probably thought they would. So that is really impressive. The turnaround Carolina's having this year is phenomenal, and that probably helped with Rico Dowdle, the stretch that he had, and then Bryce Young, he comes into his own last game. I think that was a huge game for Bryce Young. I think he needed that type of performance, and he finally gets it. And in a game against a team that, who is struggling. The Falcons are struggling. Michael Penix leaves with an injury. But the Panthers, you got to win those type of games if you're trying to change, the tide of the whole franchise, really trying to get back to that Super Bowl era with Cam Newton, Jonathan Stewart. So that's a good win. And if you're Atlanta, you got to figure things out because you don't have a first-round draft pick. It's actually to the Rams. So the Rams, who took down Seattle in a defensive, phenomenal game from both defenses, honestly. The Rams own your first-round pick. So right now, if Atlanta keeps losing, your pick is going to the Rams. And right now, it's a top 10 pick. So Atlanta, you got to start figuring things out because you don't have that first-rounder. But nonetheless, Carolina, they're 6-5. They have the same amount of wins as Detroit. The Lions are 6-4. And really, if you look at both of the franchises, the Lions, that's a letdown. Panthers, that is not a letdown. That's actually very good and impressive. So it's really good to see Carolina bounce back, and they have 2 games above Minnesota in 10th. So Carolina, if you keep winning, you have a shot at that 7th seed because San Francisco, they're 7-4. The Niners did get Brock Purdy back, so we'll see how that turns out. But if Tampa Bay plays the Rams next week, so if Tampa Bay loses, Carolina wins, you close that gap to just a game. So this was a really good win for Carolina, and I am impressed. Now going into a couple QBs, Jameis Winston. He finally makes his first start. I think the league needs Jameis Winston as a starting quarterback. He is one of the best characters in the NFL, and I love it. If you look at the stats, obviously he threw 201 yards, 1 rushing touchdown, no passing touchdowns. He did have an interception and a fumble on a sack, but the interception and fumble on a sack came late in the game. So they were trying, to obviously get that win. But nonetheless, I think the league has to have Jameis Winston start because his personality. Everyone loves it. And I know, the guy in New York is Jackson Dart. But if he doesn't start, Winston, give him the nod because it is fun to see him play. And, unfortunately, that touchdown that interception that Jameis threw came after a Green Bay touchdown. So it was 3 minutes left, I want to say. So they were trying. Actually, it was under 2 minutes. It was 40 seconds left. So he's trying to make something. He's trying to tie the game up. It was in the red zone, I believe. So that is unfortunate, but nonetheless, hopefully, Jameis, he's got to play. That's all I got to say. Just from his personality, the league needs it. Fans love it. He is becoming beloved by all the fans. So hopefully he gets a shot next year somewhere, or a backup where, the starting QB might be a little shaky. Now, next up, Jacoby Brissett. The Cardinals played the Niners. Niners obviously had Brock Purdy back, and that game really wasn't close. The 49ers ran away with it from the start. I mean, they scored, I think, 14-0 to take the lead in the first quarter. But nonetheless, even though it wasn't remotely close, Jacoby Brissett balled. I mean, he set records, honestly. He had the NFL completion record for the most completions in a single game with 47. And that actually, I mean, if you take a look at the records, he broke a record that has been standing since 1994. It was matched in 2019 by Jared Goff, but it was set by Drew Bledsoe back in the 90s. So it's been an NFL record for quite some time, and he breaks it by 2 completions, I believe. I think the original was 45 straight completions. Jameis had 47. And then also on top of that, he may have had Jacoby Brissett, 47 completions. Now, he may have had 2 interceptions, but he had 2 touchdowns and 452 yards and those 47 completions. If you look, 452 yards, that's the most yards from a Arizona quarterback since Kurt Warner back in 2008. So, and Kurt Warner at that time, he threw for 472. So, Brissett, even though you guys lost, it was a phenomenal game by him. He threw 10 incompletions. His QBR was 23.5. He had no sacks. His rating 96.8. I mean, if you take away the picks, the 2 picks, it's a career game, and it still is. I mean, that's his most yards in a game, completions obviously, but he didn't get sacked. And really, Arizona, the run game, you only had 1 runner with 24 yards. That's the most, and you're not going to win very often if you can't establish a run game. But nonetheless, Brissett, I've always been a fan of him, and see how he played, phenomenal. Just, how can you not like Jacoby? He stepped in for Kyler Murray the last couple weeks, and he hasn't been playing horrible the last few weeks, I personally think, and this week establishes that. Balled out once again. Cardinals, though, currently 3-7, and even with the record and the franchise record and everything, he said in the interview, quote, "I hope somebody breaks it tomorrow or whatever. I just want to win," end quote. That's about the completions record. So obviously, he probably would have had a different quote if they won that game. But because you won, putting up records in a losing fashion, especially talking about it right after, that's going to sting a little bit. So obviously he would say something like that. But nonetheless, a great game by Jacoby Brissett. All right, and then another game, Cleveland Browns and Baltimore Ravens. This one was interesting. Cleveland was winning 16-10 at the half, and then Dylan Gabriel didn't return from the locker room. He went in with concussion protocol, I believe, and it kind of, obviously he gets the first team snaps in practice all week, not Shedeur Sanders. But nonetheless, if you look at it, if you look at both of the before we get into the QB stats, it was, honestly, the offense wasn't doing really much with Dylan Gabriel on the field. It was field goal, a pick 6, field goal. That was how they scored in the first half. Ravens got a field goal, touchdown from a Derrick Henry. So really, offensively, Cleveland wasn't there in the first half. They were not there in the second half at all. But the first half, at least, you score 16 points to take a lead going into the break. But then if you look at Shedeur Sanders, so if we pull up both QBs, Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders, Dylan Gabriel 7 for 10 passing, so 70%, 68 yards, no touchdowns, no picks. He was sacked once. Shedeur Sanders 4 for 16, 47 yards, so he's averaging about 2.9 yards a completion, 1 interception. And the interception was not a great throw. He was sacked twice for 27 yards. And honestly, regardless where you stand at the Dylan Gabriel, Shedeur Sanders debate, Gabriel has a better pocket presence. He does. I mean, that's what you look at the pro scouts. That's what they've said. You watch the film, and obviously for Sanders, that's not the debut you want to have those many sacks and lose the lead. But he didn't get the first team reps, and it's not an excuse. I mean, I think Chase Daniel or Luke McCown, one of those backups, took to Twitter and talked about it. I'll put it right here. He talked about what it is like as a backup QB. You're not really getting those reps. You're playing the scout team, so it's not your offense, but you are playing against the starting defense for your team, so you do get those live reps, just a different offense. But nonetheless, the Browns, it was a bad second half, not a really good first half either. Then Baltimore really figured things out. That Mark Andrews touchdown after the fake tush push, I believe it was, amazing. I mean, that was trickery at its finest. So it's really going to depend if Dylan Gabriel is good to go. If he clears concussion protocol, which I believe he's in, what's going to happen at the QB position? I think they go back to Gabriel because he's the third-round pick. You're not just going to give up on him in a couple games. Even though Cleveland's 2-8, the team's not really. It's the Browns. They've never really been good. It's kind of like a graveyard for QBs. So unfortunate for Sanders and Gabriel. But if you look at the pocket presence for Sanders, obviously first game, regular season, a little jittery. I think he tried to roll. I think one of the sacks he rolled back and then just got sacked right there. The offensive line's not great. But nonetheless, it was pretty interesting to see both of them play, especially after the preseason. So seeing them both in the regular season in the stats, Shedeur threw more times, only 4 completions, and now I see it really is where you depend on the debate. I still think it's Gabriel who starts, but Shedeur maybe starts getting more of the first team reps during practice throughout the week to get him more comfortable, especially if Gabriel continues to get hurt or if he's not good to go. So that's just my saying. Wherever you lie, you can choose, but I think 4 for 16 is not great, even if you're a backup. I mean, there's backups that come in and complete better, but Cleveland, the defensive game for both teams was really good. Kyle Hamilton had a sack. He had 9 tackles. Alohi Gilman had 6 tackles for the Ravens. So wasn't the greatest time for Shedeur to come in because they were playing the Ravens. But nonetheless, that's what happened. Ravens win 23-16. And Ravens, they needed that win because now they're 5-5. Now they're catching up to the Steelers. So we'll see. We looked at the playoff standings last week, and I really want to go into my winners for the Sunday games. My top winners this week. I have 4 of them. First one, Denver. The Broncos, they own the AFC West now, taking down the Chiefs. I know it was only a 3-point game. It was a tight game offensively. Wasn't really the greatest, but their defense holding the Chiefs to low score, and the Broncos win 22-19. It was tied up at 6 points at half, so there's more scoring in the second half, but the defense standing tall. They picked off Mahomes in the red zone, which would have, I think that drive was going to turn into a touchdown, so that was a huge interception. And now with the Chargers and Chargers loss, I'll get to them soon, but with the Chargers and Chiefs loss, Denver has a 2-game lead on the AFC West, and that's huge. And now I think because of that, they can keep they can keep that momentum, because if you look at it, they're first in the AFC technically as well. They're over. They hold the tiebreaker over New England based on the win percentage in conference games as of right now. So it's gonna be it's gonna be interesting to see how they go the next 3 weeks. But they are in the driver's seat for the AFC West, because the Chiefs 5-5, that's not good, and then the Chargers, well, they just took a horrible loss. They dropped to 7-4. You got a 2-game lead for Denver, so this might be the year. I think it is. I'm calling it now that AFC West belongs to someone else other than the Chiefs. Now, another team, another winner from this week, I think is the Rams defense. I've talked about them in previous episodes, the Rams, but this defense, a huge game by them as they forced 4 turnovers, all interceptions on Sam Darnold. And the passes weren't great by Darnold, but the Rams were in perfect position each time. Like, they jumped the route. They would jump it. Good returns. They got pressure on Darnold all the time. The defense allowing 19 points, but they held the Seahawks to under 50% on third down conversions. despite being on the field for nearly 38 minutes. Now, the Rams were on the field the entire game, basically. Not the entire game, but 38 minutes is a long time to be on the field for a defense, and to hold up the way they did, forcing 4 turnovers, is phenomenal. The Seahawks missed the long field goal to win it. It was a 61-yarder with a chance to win it, but the Rams, they held on, and there was a PI. I don't think, right before the field goal, I think the PI was a little, I don't know. I don't think there was much there, personally, watching the replay, but the refs called it nonetheless. You got to play better defense. If the refs call it, you got to stop it. But 4th down conversions, yeah, Seattle went 1 for 1. Red zone, though, 1 for 4. 1 for 4. So the Rams defense really stepped up, and, they only allowed, Kenneth Walker to get 67 rushing yards on 16 carries. Zach Charbonnet had 37 on 11 carries. I liked what the Rams did. If you look at the stats, Cam Curl, Nate Landman, and Omar Spates led the defense for tackling. Cam Curl, 11 total tackles, 9 solo as a DB. That's insane. And then Nate and Omar tied for 7. So it was incredible. 3 QB hits, and 3 different players with an interception. Cameron Kitchens, 2 picks. So phenomenal game by the Rams. I really thought when they were up 14-0, they looked like the best team in the NFC. I still think they do, but the offense kind of slowed down. But Seattle's defense is really good. So Rams defense, I think it's the best defense Stafford has had, best defense the Rams have had in a long time. I think the broadcast was saying, statistically speaking, since the greatest show on turf. Another winner, Bryce Young. We talked about him a little bit earlier, and I think he needed a game like this. After throwing a low of 124 yards last week against the Packers, he goes for a franchise record of 448 in a comeback win. They were down 21-7 at one point, and he was able to come back, throw 3 touchdowns total, 31 completions, 448 yards, 2 of those to T-Mac, who's the rookie, but Young gets the dub in OT. Phenomenal game by Bryce Young, and he's got the Panthers to a winning record. Everyone wrote off Bryce Young the last couple years. Even if he's not the answer long term, he has them winning. That's all you need as a QB, so props to Bryce Young. He's a winner. And then the last winner, Christian Watson. He's played in 4 games this year, and I was really impressed with him this past game. He's only played in 4 games. He finally found the end zone. He had 2 touchdowns on the day, which is his only touchdowns of the season. But every game, he's been targeted 4 times, except on Sunday where he was targeted 5 and he had 4 receptions. So he's getting 4 targets a game. I think it'll increase as he gets more comfortable, and so does Jordan Love with him. He was a crucial player in that win because it was 27-20 against Winston and the Giants. So those 2 touchdowns really helped the Packers. I think that's a win for Watson to get back into the field, get back into scoring, and he's probably, he's climbing up the target leaderboard for the Packers. So I think that's a big game for Christian Watson. Now, the losers of the week. I'll end you on the losers. Chiefs, Sam Darnold, Chargers, all losers this week, and 2 of the AFC West. So Chiefs, they dropped to 500 once again. Losing to AFC West leaders Denver. The Chiefs looked like they had momentum at that time, like I said, before they threw that pick in the red zone. But, they had momentum, but it wasn't a match as Will Lutz hit that game-winning field goal, obviously. But the offense couldn't get in the end zone. And now with this loss, the Chiefs are 9th in the playoff standings. And they're tied with 3 others at 5-5, with the Ravens, who are starting to warm up, and the Texans, who just found a dub. So you got to think, if you're the Chiefs, usually, you've had the benefit of the doubt of being able to strike in the AFC West, but Denver, they're cooking. They only have 2 losses. And Chargers, they had this bad loss. I'll get to them in a second. But the Chiefs, you sit 9th because you don't have the tiebreaker of the Texans. And Jags, who just beat the Chargers, they needed that win. They get themselves into 7th. They're 6-4. Houston's 5-5. Kansas City's 5-5. Baltimore's 5-5. Miami's 4-7. So those are the next closest. But the Texans, they lost to the Broncos by 3. Wouldn't say their reign is completely over, though, because it's the Chiefs. We all know they could rattle off a run with all 7 of these games left. They could go and win all 7 games, and none of us would be surprised. But right now, they're the losers of the week. Next one, Chargers. Just wow. I mean, I'm a Herbert fan, but that game was atrocious. That was awful. They lost 35-6. Now, Herbert only 81 passing yards. That is terrible. Yet he was the leading rusher with 21 yards. So, you know, a lot of passing woes, but he still leads the team in rushing yards, but it was only 21 yards, so no run game. And I think a big issue with the Chargers is the offensive line. So them winning this many games, to me, with that offensive line is impressive. I know they just had Joe Alt out get hurt, but, I mean, they were on a 3-game winning streak. They have 7 wins with that offensive line, and now they just, tanked against the Jaguars, who needed that win. But, if you're the Chargers, that is bad. Herbert, if you watch, a lot of people are like, oh, Herbert's Mr. Hypothetical, right? Hypothetical if he had this. If you watch the game, the offensive lines are bad. He has no time in the pocket. He's scrambling. He's trying to make plays. Last year, it was drops with the receivers and the line. This year, it's the line. So, I don't think you can put all the blame on him. I think, obviously, he needs more than 81 passing yards in a single game. But the offensive line, you got to figure things out, because you're not going to win if your QB is going 10 for 18. I think he only threw like a handful of passes in the second half. He has no time. What are you going to do? Even with that, he only, I believe, was sacked just twice. He was sacked twice, but no runner had more than 5 carries, and the defense allowed nearly 200 yards on the ground. So overall, just a horrible game for LA. Last loser of the week, Sam Darnold. The Seattle, you guys have had a great season, 7-3 now. Just not a great performance against the Rams. I talked about it a little bit earlier. You had 4 picks. All of those were not great throws. No touchdowns, 29 for 44 passing, a rating of 45.5. So, those picks, one of them was a jump throw going forward. Like, it seemed like he just wasn't sensing where the Rams DBs were, or he's just trying to do too much. He's historically not the greatest in SoFi. Last year with the Vikings, it obviously was not good. And then this year with Seattle, they do have one more crack at the Rams, and I think it's going to be a great game because of the defenses, and it won't be in SoFi. But Sam Darnold, that was a bad performance. 4 picks. I'm still not writing him off, but I just think against the Rams in SoFi, he struggles, and it showed again. So, not ideal. But I think Seattle's going to bounce back, and I still think they'll be second in the NFC West with the Rams top. But nonetheless, that is this week's After the Buzzer with Mitch. Those are my losers. Those are my winners. Top matchups, important matchups. It was a fun week of NFL football, and I can't wait to see what happens next week. Make sure you like, share, comment, and subscribe for more. We'll have the picks, my weekly picks coming out. I think I did decently this past week, and then maybe a couple other things, so stay tuned. Make sure you click the notification bell as well to get notified when I post, and I hope you enjoyed. I'll see you next time.